The big debate is, you know, when the Ohio and Texas primary was NAFTA, 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 and some areas benefited and some areas didn't, and Texas did this and Ohio did that and whatnot. But just think, if all the communities that were very successful 50 years ago and pumped a lot of money into this country in steel and rubber and coal and all this stuff, that were hurt by globalization, the investment of $1 trillion was made into those communities on water lines, sewer lines, roads, education, community colleges, worker retraining, investments into the NIH research, investments in alternative energy, figuring out who's going to make the windmill, figuring out how biodiesel is actually going to work without having all these different adverse effects, figuring out who's going to make the solar panels and how we're going to make these investments. $1 trillion that has been spent in Iraq, and we have no real signs of success. No real signs of success. And so this is what we're all factoring in here. The fact that it's costing us $1 trillion already and projected to be $3 trillion. The fact that all that money is borrowed. The fact that our friends on the other side raised the debt limit 5 times and borrowed $3 trillion already from Japan, China, and OPEC countries. The fact that our homeland is suffered because of the Garden Reserve, and so we are incapable now of addressing major threats to the United States. The fact that our Army is not at the level it should be. All of these factor in. The lack of readiness, the money, and then the lost opportunity. As Americans, we need to start thinking of, we are Americans. We think about what can be. We think about the future. We think about where we want to go, what we want to be, what we want to do. And we are stuck because we don't have the resources to make the investments that Americans have always made. Canals, railroads, internet superhighway, investments in all these research projects that bounce into the internet and put men in spaceships and land them on the moon. And when you look at where all of the great powers, over time, they get too extended, too far out ahead of themselves. And what we're saying here is there is a reality on the ground that we need to deal with in order to address the issues that are facing the United States of America. This is about making sure that we're a strong country. If we're not a strong country, we are of no good to anybody else. And the point that we are trying to make, and that the Speaker is trying to make, and the Democrats in the Senate are trying to make, and like-minded Republicans are trying to make, is that we can't sacrifice the United States of America for Iraq. Now, we do bear some responsibility because we went in, but you can't continue to say that we're going to borrow, because we don't have this money, we're borrowing it all. $3 trillion is what the projections are now for the cost of Iraq when you factor in vets coming back and health care and whatnot. $3 trillion? We're going to borrow it from China and Japan and OPEC countries to fund a war that we're not having any political progress at all? The sides are not reconciling. They're not moving forward in the political process. That's a problem. So even if you say we need to stay, you need to then be willing to spend enormous amounts of money, United States dollars, over the course of the next several decades. And as some people have said, over the course of the next 100 years. And what we're trying to say is, we've got problems here at home that we need to deal with. We've got an energy crisis. We've got a health care issue that needs to be dealt with. Growing inequality. We can't afford to spend $3 trillion on this war. No, I don't think that's unreasonable. because the strength of the country is at stake. And all we have to do is look around.